can understand the fear of a potential disruptive technology. I think that the meat industry today is struggling. It cannot cope with the rising demand. I don't think that there's something really behind banning something. It's more, I think, populism. That said, you still need to support the future in innovation.
So imagine a world where we can produce meat without raising a single animal. I know it sounds like science fiction, but it's actually becoming a reality. Look, welcome to this week's episode of Leaders on a Mission, where we delve into the groundbreaking innovations tackling our planet's most pressing challenges. I'm your host, Simon Leach, and today we've got a fascinating guest with us, Arik Kaufman. He was a founder and a CEO of Steakholder Foods. Arik's pioneering work really in cellular agriculture is not really just aimed at reducing environmental impact of traditional meat production, but really to revolutionize a whole entire industry. So join us today as we explore his incredible journey that really could transform our plates to protect our planet. And Arik, I know you're a busy man, so thanks for joining me today on the show.
Thank you for having me here.
No, it's a pleasure. And before we dive into Steakholder Foods, always interested about how you get to the journey of co-founding the business, right? So I'm just thinking, share with us maybe a couple of impactful moments, from your career that were really relevant to you co-founding the business.
I think that I can start with an event that does not have to do with my career. I think that I was raised in the Netherlands. My first memory that I remember myself was walking in the fields and seeing cows as you see them in the movies. Walking freely and everything is pastoralic and looks amazing. And that's a memory that I remember until today. And if we move fast forward a lot of years afterwards, I had I don't know if a typical entrepreneur journey. I started as a lawyer on the commercial side, a lot of M&A deals, a lot of fundraising. Afterwards, so I learned the basics. I saw how this world of structuring a deal happens, but from the legal point of view. Afterwards, I was the head of biz dev of Mall Research. It's the tech transfer of Clalit. It's the second largest HMO in the world, the largest one in Israel. So I saw a lot of facilitation of deal, how you have an idea that is born at a hospital, that the doctor has an idea, and how you can take this idea, see if it has any sense commercially wise, technologically wise, and how you shape this deal into a real company that knows how to raise funds. So I had this role for a few years, for almost 7 years. And afterwards, I felt that I'm ready to take the next step and to found my own company.
Okay. So why Steakholder Foods then? How did you come to founding this business?
The true story is that we sat in a restaurant near Tel Aviv, a place called Herzliya, 10 minutes from Tel Aviv. Who has been in Israel knows. And there was a huge buzz at the time that has to do with a new burger. I don't want to mention the name, but heavily market around this implementation of this burger here in Israel. Everyone talked about it. I said, okay, I need to taste it. And we went to the restaurant and we tasted it, and we said, okay, that's not something that's so good. It's only the marketing was amazing, but it's not so good. And that's how it started. We started with a huge dream. The dream turned into reality, but the dream at the time was that I touched base with someone else that I knew from the business, one of my partners, and asked him if he can engineer a machine that will know how to 3D print real meat. And that's how it started. The answer was yes after a few days. Then we started to establish a budget, a business plan, and that's how we've started to roll. And we aimed as high as possible. We will talk about it laterwards, and we've shifted as time went by and reality struck us. But at the time, super romantic. Let's try to change the world. That's how it started.
Amazing. And this was, it looks like it was December 19. So we all know what happened around that kind of time, right? So it feels like it's just been one thing after another, right? With it being COVID and the various tailwinds in the industry, right?
Yes, so it started, frankly, earlier. The conversation between us and the idea to establish the company started a little bit earlier. But yes, like I think that since we've established the company, everything that could go wrong in the world went wrong. Like I couldn't imagine a more challenging time period since we've started the company. Yes.
Amazing, but you're still here. Look at you, Arik. You haven't even got any grey hair. Well, you got a little bit of grey hair.
Depends if we after a fundraising, before fundraising. But yes, I think that we've learned a lot from this journey. Me also personally learned a lot from this journey, and I think that we were able to max out the best we could due to all these circumstances. And we can dive into these circumstances later, but as you said, COVID, a war between Russia and Ukraine, the tension between the United States and China, all the election that has to do with the United States, the interest rates, the war here in Israel, the whole industry that has a huge challenge now, the whole alternative meat protein industry that has its own challenges, regulation that tries to make your life a little bit harder. So yes, it's super tough, but we are still here kicking.
Yeah, amazing. So tell us a little bit about when you think about the business, maybe the main kind of milestones the business has achieved. Or in fact, actually, you know what? I know you dream big. So let me come back to that. I know you dream big at the beginning. Where you stand now, what's the kind of vision? Tell us about the vision and the goals for Steakholder Foods.
My vision at the time, 2019, was that we need to produce machines that will be able to 3D print at the commercial scale, and that's key, commercial scale, real meat. That was the vision at the time. I think that this vision, if I'm looking at the future, it hasn't changed. I still really believe that we need to find a better way to produce our meat. Not only through raising cows for 2 years, with all the hustle and bustle that has to do with raising the cows, the emissions that are extracted, it's dirty. Or not only cows, also pigs, and also horses, and all the rest of the meats that humanity eats. I think that we are at a stage today that we can produce a technological, more advanced way to produce our meat. But that said, I think that the journey is a little bit longer than we thought, because all of what I've mentioned before, and because there's a learning curve, and there's reality, and there's a lot of of circumstances that need to be put into this equation, and it affects the timeline to achieve this goal. And that's why we understood that in order to survive, not to close as many companies have closed in this industry, we can talk about it if you want, we need to adapt ourselves. So there are stages to this game. The end goal is producing a machine that will 3D print real meat, but in the meanwhile we can 3D print other products that are fully plant-based in the beginning, and in next stage they will contain a certain percentage of cultured meat, and still there will be a leap forward compared to the products that are out there today.
Got it. Okay. So let's start with the initial dream and the vision, right? Using machines to print real meat. So tell us how that works, first of all.
Okay. So we've developed a machine a few years ago, a concept machine. So it was not a commercial machine that can be implemented into a factory, that knew how to take cells that we've provided them, this machine, mix them into inks, and to 3D print at a very high throughput, very accurate way, these cells, keep them alive, at a rate and more than 99%, 3D print them at a certain matrix. And then we knew how to take this steak, for instance, and mature it. So let these cells grow, let the cells be aligned in a certain way that enables muscle fibers to connect. And then after a certain time period, this steak potentially is equivalent to a steak that we eat in the restaurant, a real steak. So that was the dream. That was the machinery that we've developed. And these machines were adapted to the current business model that we have today.
Got it. Okay. And like from a technical viewpoint, what have been the real kind of biggest challenges in being able to kind of bring that to market, for instance? But both maybe technically and commercially. Who knows?
I think that the biggest hurdle is cost. And that's the biggest hurdle of the industry today. This industry was non-existent a few years ago, like for sure, like 10, 15 years ago, there were no cultured meat companies. And all the know-how and all the materials that are needed to these cells to grow into biomass that we can eat, they came from the pharmaceutical industry. So the cost was really high, and it takes time to adapt all these factors, all these growth factors, and all these cell lines that in order them to be equivalent and cost effective for food sector. So I think that cost is the main hurdle. The second hurdle is technology. It like takes there's a huge technological barrier that is needed in order to 3D print a steak that at the end will mature and will taste exactly or like almost the same as a steak that you are used to eat in the restaurant. I think that there's no place for faults. So like if you're a consumer and you're coming to a restaurant, you're eating a product once and it's not so good, you won't eat it again. So I think that that's also something that we understood, that it will take time until like the market will reach a point that will be fully cultivated meat that will be in the restaurants that you will eat and you will say, wow, it's amazing. It tastes amazing. It tastes exactly the same or better than the meat that I'm used to eat, the traditional meat.
Yeah, I got it. And is that how long will that take to evolve? Well, if you look at the next 5, 10, 15 years, how do you see this evolving?
You're talking about like fully cultivated meat, like real meat, fully cultivated meat. So if you'd asked me in the past, I would say not only I think that you have like surveys of like the leading like consulting firms and some of the leading banks that spoke about 2030 as like a pivotal year under which we will see already a multi-billion-dollar market, the cultured market. I think that the estimations need to be pushed forward a little bit. Not 2030. Okay, that's I think the best estimate I can say today. We are at 2024, 6 years from now. I don't think that the industry will be there as a really disruptive multi-billion-dollar industry. I think that it will take more time, but it will reach the point that it will be there. I don't see any questions regarding the cultured meat industry being an industry that will be there. It will, as time will go by, once it will be integrated into like the system, it will grow and grow exponentially.
Got it. Awesome. No, thank you for that. It sounds like the journey to that point is about survival, right? I mean, we've seen so many companies, over the last few months close their doors, challenges around financing and funding. So I know you guys kind of made this pivot, as it were. It was a practical pivot in order for you to be able to kind of commercialize. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I think that regarding the companies that are closing, I think it's a very sad. I know personally, like some of the founders of these companies, some of them are amazing companies that with the like right funding would really be out there in the market. I know some culture meat companies that have reached like a point that they know how to produce their biomass, their cultured ingredients at a cost that is almost cost effective, and still like the investors closed the door and did not want to invest into them again. And I think that that's the global atmosphere right now. I think that the global atmosphere right now is super challenging. It's harsh. It's very violent, I think, if I can use the word. And the investors today are super practical. They don't have any patience to wait for a year or 2 years in order for dreams to become to reality. They want it now. And I think that's the environment we are in today. And we are a public company. So there are pluses to being public and there are minuses. And I think that at the current environment, I think there are more pluses than minuses to being public.
Oh, awesome. I mean, a couple of things you've mentioned there, I'd love to dive into a little bit more with you. looking back at 2021, it seemed there was patient capital at that time. I mean, people knew it would take a long time, right?
I love the word patient capital. That's new. That's an amazing word. Patient capital.
Well, why all of a sudden is there no patient capital?
I think we can add another phrase. I don't know if it's common, but maybe semi-naive capital, not only patient's capital. And I think that if you combine the semi-naive capital, like checks that were written without really checking anything, only like because someone wanted to be as part of the buzz, and because the circumstances, the global circumstances have changed, then the semi-naive capital became capital that is now zero patients capital. What was the question? Sorry, like
No, why has it changed now? Yes. Then why? Yeah.
So it changed because everything has changed. As we talked before, the patients today is zero. Our world wars, potential world wars that everyone talks about, and like I personally don't remember a time where the terminology was so violent. Like we are talking about bombardiering like states. And we are talking about World War III. It's a phrase that we continue to hear. And investors, I think the first thing that an investor is looking for is like clarity. And once like the world is so unclear, then there's zero patience for investors. They want to know exactly what's about to happen, and if not, they won't invest.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made the decision. You went public. Remind me, when was it?
We uplisted to the NASDAQ in 2021.
2021, yeah. Okay. And I'm curious, because we know it's been a really tough time for micro-cap companies or companies with longer-term vision, as it were. They've been heavily penalized, by the market. But when you think about now public, private, and advanced pros and cons, talk me through them. What are the pros and cons?
So the cons, maybe it's a pro. You need to be 100% accurate with the information that you are disclosing to the investors for sure, and also like to the public. You cannot state things that are not accurate. You need to back up your statements, because you have a regulator and you have potential lawsuits. So we are always 100% accurate with what we say. And if we are not sure, we have all these disclaimers that we are not sure. And I think it's a con from one side, because when you're private, you are more flexible. Not saying that you can lie, but you can be more flexible with the things that you disclose, with the timing of when you disclose them. So that's a con and a pro. I think that the con is that you are linked to the market. So if the market decides to sell your share, and the investors decide to sell your share, you can be an amazing company, but your valuation will go down. When you're private, your valuation is always the last round that you've raised. So you can like be active for 2 years. You can fire 70 or 80% of your staff, and you will be still potentially valued a $500 million company. That said, it's a 0-1 game when you're private. You can raise hundreds of millions of dollars, but if you won't raise in the next round, you're closed. That's something that we see in a lot of private companies. When you're public, you're more flexible. You have more tools to raise funds. If I look back since the day that we've uplisted and today and to 2024, I'm very happy that we're public. I think that if we were private all these years, potentially we've been able to raise more, but we will still be struggling, as most of the private companies are today, with access to funds. And there are amazing companies, as I said before, that closed, that really like recently really closed, because they could not convince their investors to inject additional funds. And they show progress, and still the investors said, okay, that's nice, but we are cutting our losses. It's like unsure for us if this will ever succeed in the time frame that we wanted to succeed. So we are closing.
Yeah, understand. It seems like this industry requires a different type of capital, a different type of support, because the impact it can have, I think you outlined at the beginning, can be transformational, right, in terms of the solutions out there, but it's just going to take time. And We seem to be in that marketplace at the moment where time is a challenge.
I think it's key what you said. I think that we need looking for the right phrase, how to say it in English. In Hebrew, you say that you need a mature, a grown-up that will look after like the world. And I think that the culture meat industry needs this grown-up, and the grown-up is linked to a state. You need a state that will say, okay, we are looking for one end to secure our food security. On the other end, we want to reduce the impact on climate. We understand that these companies need a long time period to reach a point that they can be profitable. Let's assist them. Let's inject funds. Let's take away all the noise. And the noise is a huge noise, because you have in the background like the giants of the world, the giant companies that have sometime like some additional interest, not only a commercial interest, and they can like may potentially invest in your company and like close the company afterwards, because they have their own industry that they need to back up. So we begin to see countries that begin to support this sector. Not enough, I think. I think that we need more support. We need potential off-takers that will say, okay, if you will be able to produce your product at a certain price, I undertake to be the off-taker of this product. And then we will see like this loop closing. But it's a journey, as I said. It doesn't happen in a year. It doesn't happen in 2 years. And I think that the ship has already left. And I'm optimistic. Okay.
Yeah. What countries do you think are supportive, and where do you see opportunity in the space?
So Singapore is very supportive. If we are talking only on the cultured meat industry, Singapore is super supportive. Also on a regulatory side, also like a lot of funds were invested in this industry. Europe, also like if we are looking at the Netherlands also are beginning to inject like some amounts into like infrastructure. The United States, I have to say, from what I know, and I'm not like an expert for this industry, the United States, they provided approvals to 2 companies to potentially sell their products. So that's also like, I think, a very positive stage. But we need to see like hundreds of millions and billions injected into this industry if we want to really to see it to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got the headwinds in the US of certain states, and we see this in Europe as well, banning the sale of cultured meat. And it just seems that there is a war there with the incumbent industry. And you hear so much about campaigns being led and the influence of consumers through campaigns. It's like a real challenge. You can really see this. The advocates for the meat industry and what they're trying to do to the industry.
I don't think it's new. I think that, and I can understand the other side. I can understand the fear of a potential disruptive technology. That I think it's natural. I can say that nothing to fear about, because no one is selling nothing yet. And also when companies will begin to sell products that will contain a certain percent of, or maybe will be fully cultivated, it won't disrupt the traditional meat industry. For sure not in the beginning. It will take its time. I think that the meat industry today is struggling. It cannot like cope with the rising demand. We see countries where like you don't have access to meat, not on an ongoing basis. So I don't think that there's something really behind banning something. It's more, I think, populism. Okay, so you have states that are banning a technology that no one is like really commercializing. So what do you gain from that? You potentially support like lobbyism, and I can understand it. But that said, you still need to support the future in innovation. And I think there's always a right way to find a balance, I think, between like supporting innovation, not throwing to the garbage like real people that provide for their families and understand it. And they always needs to find this right balance.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine the job, and your job particularly as co-founder and CEO, is to convince people, be convincing. Now it just feels like maybe where you started off, you had to convince people, but with everything that's happened, you're having to fly the flag and convince people even more so every day, right?
So I'm a convincer. I believe in like it can be in a taxi cab if I fly, and I fly a lot to try to sell our machines, and then I find myself in taxi cabs, like different taxi cab, different Uber drivers, and sometimes they are like pro-Israel, sometimes they're against Israel, sometimes they're pro a certain sector, and I believe in talking. So I'm always speaking out loud. I never try to show the other side that I'm correct and he or she is wrong, because always you need to understand from where she or he comes from, why she says what she says. And I think that it's not hard to convince. If you look at history, at all the technological evolvements that we had since the 19th century, always there was like a question mark regarding a certain sector, and it takes its time in order for technology to prevail. We can see it with electrical cars, and now maybe hydrogen cars, and maybe like water run cars, and you have always industries that have their own interests. I don't think that they are bad. No, at the end, like this, they provide and the support, and we cannot like take industries away because that's the system. But the system takes its time to take down its defenses and say, okay, maybe we can implement this technology and be part of it, and not like try to ruin it at different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I've got a question for you, thinking about like what you know now and what you've been through over the last 4 years or so. What would you do differently if you had a crystal ball and you were going back to 2019?
Okay, if I had a crystal ball and could go back to 2019 with the assumption that I know what will happen until now, I would focus most of our funds to the development of the machines, of the printers. I would know from the beginning it's a race and it's a journey, and let's try to focus only what I'm sure that I will be best and what I will be able to commercialize. Because at the time, we were sure that the funds will continue to flow, the whole industry was, and we were planning establishing worldwide facilities. But that said, I have to say that we understood a few years ago already that that's the case. So this crystal ball de facto was already implemented a few years ago at our company, and that's what we are doing for the last few years. We are focusing only on like what we are good at, and we are leaving for the rest to develop the biomass, for instance. And we are developing machines, premixes that can be sold today, and that know how to take this biomass in the future and integrate it into our product. So I think that the learning curve from our end was quite fast, I have to say.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. So tell us a little bit about the premixers and the printers, because you guys have had some really good success over the last kind of few weeks. I noticed around some commercial agreements that you've published, as it were. So like what, where are the main milestones, and what is the business doing now?
I will separate the two phases. Phase one was the proof of concept phase. Then we, at that phase, we've developed machines that 3D printed. Was very famous at the time, the largest steak ever printed, fully cultured steak. By the end of 2021, it was a 100-gram steak, fully cultivated. A year after, a little bit more than a year after, we had the 3D printed, the first 3D printed fish fillet. We had like our prime minister taste it. So that, I think, were like two huge milestones, technological milestones. If I'm looking to the other phase, it's the commercial phase. That's the practical phase. There we have a few events that happened. We've signed an agreement with a GCC accredited company that is fully owned by one of the GCC states, under which we potentially will commercialize our printers to them. Recently, we've signed a deal here in Israel with Weiler Farms to 3D print, to sell our machines, mixed burgers and machines that will print steaks to them. We had two additional agreements, one with another brand to sell them like our premixes of fish products, fish salads, and we had another collaboration in Taiwan also to potentially commercialize our products there. So it's two phases. We have the proof of concept phase, the commercial phase, and now we are really trying to see more substantial strategic engagement. We need to provide and show the market that we are able to engage with real players, strategic players, and provide them with our products and begin to see revenue.
Got it. No, absolutely. And congratulations for
Thank
that.
you.
And, that's great progress, as it were. And so tell us a little bit about, where you see the future then for the company over the next kind of 2 to 3 years.
So we are working 100% on the time on trying to expand globally. We just came back from a very successful road trip in Europe. Everything I'm saying here in the podcast, just to mention it, is public domain, so I'm not saying anything new. And the reason that we had this road trip was to try to secure additional deals. So today I think that we feel comfortable flying to potential clients because we have something to show them that can already be sold to them. So we are flying with the kit. We have brochures of each printer. We have our products, our pipeline products, and we are trying to engage with real strategic players. So the 2 to 3 years from now, I hope to see additional agreements, strategic ones, in territories in Europe for sure. We want to expand also to the US and to Asia, and we want to begin to see our products on the shelves. Not under our brand mostly. We are a B2B company, so we will be the one that will provide the technology. It will be utilized or printed by Steakholder, but the brand will be the brand of the off-taker. And I think that the moment we shift to a stage that our products are already at the shelves, it will be very substantial for us. And I think that then the investors and the market will understand the Steakholder Foods is real. It has developed something real, and it's on the shelves now. Customers love it, and hopefully we will see ourselves expanding globally.
Yeah, absolutely. But it sounds like the business model now is very much aligned to using companies that have access to the consumer, access to distributors, etc., and providing solutions and working in partnership with those companies. So that sounds like probably a different business model to what you probably envisaged initially, right?
So yes, I think that at the time we thought potentially that we will be a B2C company. Today we are trying to stay as lean as possible, capital-wise, and I think that once we are engaged with players that are already on the shelves, and people, the customers love their products, I think it's very easy to implement our products as part of their portfolio, and then the way to expand in a very logical way is much more comfortable for us than establishing facilities worldwide, keeping our brand, investing into marketing, trying to reach the shelves. It's a strategy that is relevant for different times, not for now.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And if someone purchases the printer, for instance, how do they get it? Is it easy to implement into their facilities and to get it to work? And what kind of scale can it produce?
Part of our development was aimed to develop a printer that will be super easy to use. It's fully digital controlled. You don't need to be a pilot to handle it. It's adaptable very easily into factories, so it can be integrated easily. It doesn't need to be adapted too much. Very easily integrated into a factory, and the capacity is also aligned with the capacity of alternative equipment, the alternative meat protein. So it can produce at a very high throughput. We are talking about at least it's hundreds of kilograms per hour per printhead. So you can multiply the printheads, and then you have a capacity that is very high and cost effective.
Got it. Okay. So now it's kind of working in the plant-based. It's fully commercial and working with plant-based kind of ingredients, as it were.
At the first stage, exactly. We are working with plant-based manufacturers and providers to provide a product that is a leap forward because you don't have like commercial 3D printed products out there too much. For sure, not 3D printed fish. And the meat you have like potentially. And in addition, we're also working on like the future. The future is integrating cultured ingredients inside these printers. They are already today applicable to be to take cultured ingredients and implement them into the premixes. And we always working on the future. We have our innovation department that works on like future products that will be more advanced, more cultured.
Yeah, no, fantastic. No, that's great context. I remember when we were chatting a few weeks back, we were looking at the Israeli ecosystem and innovation, which is just unbelievable, right? And I know it's a fantastic hub. When you look across the industry, I've been amazed at how many companies are suing each other that are operating on the space. And I was just curious, how do you maintain a collaborative kind of ecosystem where you work together, but you're kind of, you're developing solutions for roughly the same marketplace? And I'm curious your views on this.
So I always look at the competitors as colleagues. I think the world is a huge world. I think there's space for all of us. I don't look at a potential gain from my end by suing a competitor here in Israel. That's not our business model. I think that if you are sure about yourself and you know how to integrate into the right market, I think there's space for all. That said, I'm not naive. There are like lawsuits here in Israel. If we are looking at the cultured meat industry, no one is selling yet. So that's the reason that we didn't see lawsuits out there yet. Also not in Israel. I believe that if like one company would steal technology from another company, we would have seen lawsuits here in Israel. I can understand companies in the world, in this alternative meat industry, that are suing one another if like one company potentially allegedly steals or infringe technology from the other. So I think it's not like 100% romantic here in Israel, but there is like a certain level of dignity and co-working that we have here between like this community of alternative meat companies.
Yeah. Do you find support, personal support? Because it's a lonely job being a CEO, and especially in difficult marketplaces. Where do you find support and assistance from around to help you on the journey?
So it's key what you said. It's a very lonely job being a CEO because it all lies on you. It's either you succeed or you don't. I'm from one end trying to always like tap the market, talk with the industry, understand the way that my colleagues think this industry is going to understand the difficulties, trying to consult with the best that is out there, because there's only a level of things that there's much that I don't, and there are expertise that I don't have. But in the end, that said, you need to understand, or I personally understand, that all lies on your shoulders at the end, because you are responsible. The CEO is responsible, but I'm trying to surround myself with smart people that will assist me.
Yeah, that's great. And how many people are there in the company at the
So
moment?
today we are around between 40 to 50 employees. As I said, we are trying to stay as lean as possible. And I think that at this stage, once we will see maybe additional engagement, global engagement, we will see this number like going up a little bit.
Yeah, no, got it. So final question for me, when you think about the sector, I think the alternative protein sector as a whole, actually, as opposed to just the cultured space, have we hit the bottom? Are we kind of, do you feel like we're bouncing, or are we still in this kind of trying to find the bottom?
I can tell you that I was in the Netherlands a few days ago. I talked there in a convention, and I've tasted alternative meat products, amazing products that are potentially will be sold. I think that the problem with the alternative meat industry, the problem that we had until now, is that the products were not good enough. They reached a certain level, And I think that once we will see much more exciting products come out there to the market, and they are there, like the fact that stakeholder foods or stakeholder or companies alike are about to show products that are much better, texture-wise, taste-wise, that they are a different level. I think that this industry has a lot where to evolve to. So I think that it will take its time, but it's in the whole alternative meat product industry is here to stay. It will grow. It will grow for sure.
Fantastic. Well, you sound kind of, pretty bullish on things based on your recent experience in, to Holland, and that's great to hear. And listen, I really appreciate that you coming on today and just sharing your journey. We really appreciate it, and I'm sure the listeners, will enjoy the conversation. There's lots of learnings there. So, Arik, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me, Simon.
Pleasure.